great. But you have to kind of balance, like, what am I going to put up with versus what makes me happy. And for me, like, the doing of the improv is what it's about. And if I'm performing in front of 10 people, you know what? That's great, because we're going to have a great time, and that's kind of like my guarantee. This is going to be fun, and I don't need to have a million people. I mean, it's great when they're all there, but you know, you have to realize, you know, like, the theater doesn't own you. You know, they don't own your performance. They don't own who you are, and you have that autonomy to say, you know what? I don't agree with what's going on here, and I'm going to step away. And you know what? Maybe they care. Maybe more often than not, they don't care, because a lot of times improv theaters are just like, they've got to get people to take their classes. So if you're not taking class and you're performing there and you leave, they're just like, well, we have new students coming in, and you know, they'll pay for classes and we'll keep going. But you kind of have to balance, like, what will I put up with, and just realize that, yeah, no one owns art. No one owns comedy, and yeah, they have a space, but I can do this anywhere.
Now, that actually raises another interesting question. I've got friends that are into spoken word, and of course there's a thing between spoken word and regular poetry, or the more standard kind of poetry, for lack of a better term, versus performance poetry, which is what a lot of spoken word is and everything. So I was wondering, how do you do any stand-up comedy, and how do you differentiate between the stand-up comedy and the improv? Because I imagine that there's probably some people that are very good at both improv and stand-up comedy, and there's probably some that are only good at one or the other.
Right. Well, my theory on that is, if you start as a stand-up and then try to take improv, you're going to struggle with improv, because as a stand-up, you're used to being on stage by yourself and getting all the laughs. And improv is a collaborative thing where sometimes your job isn't to get the laugh. Your job is to, like, build, you know? So I've seen comics struggle with that. And if you're an improviser going to stand up, it might be a little it might be a little easier, because even if maybe the audience isn't laughing at your jokes, you've kind of got this thing that you can fall back on where, you know, you can improvise, basically. You know, like, if the jokes aren't going, you can just kind of wing it. I do stand-up. I used to teach a stand-up writing course. I feel like if you watch me do stand-up, though, you can definitely tell that I have an improv background. I love to riff with the audience. I love to talk to the audience. Yeah, it eventually just becomes, you know, kind of just degrades into, like, a conversation with the audience. And really, that's what good stand-up is. Like, the best stand-ups, if you watched, if you saw someone's comedy special on Netflix and you had seen them 10 times all year, like, you'd have seen the same. Like, once they get it, it's the same material. All the breaks are the same. All the gasps they do are the same. Like, everything's the same because it's a learned thing. But the secret is making it seem conversational. And so, because of my improv background, I'm always conversational. My struggle is I don't like to sit down and write material. So I travel a lot for work. So most of my stand-up comes from when I'm on the road, just thinking about things to myself and kind of repeating them and working them in my head. And I feel that improv really helps me a lot. And I feel, stand-ups really have to, like, get that conversational tone. There's definitely a thing, a few years, like, once they start and you can just see them on stage and you see they're just trying to recite the jokes they wrote, and then suddenly, like, they won't even notice it. You'll just be like, you're different now. Like, you're up there, you're confident, you're not worried about what your material is. You're just having a conversation with the audience, and it's amazing to watch.
And there was a time that sketch comedy on TV was very popular. And I'm imagining that a lot of those sketch comedians were also had some sort of background in improv. Like, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm thinking, like, the Wayans probably had some background in improv, as did some of the other folks who did sketch comedy. Because when I watch sketch comedy routines, whether that's the old show in Living Color, or whether that's some of the more current ones like Key and Peele, they seem they have a strong background in improv, because a lot of even the routines that they're doing, I can almost see those routines as being a improv routine, whether that's Homie the Clown, if we want to go way back when, or whether that's some of the stuff that Key and Peele has done and everything. You can almost see those as being improv routines.
Yeah, Key and Peele definitely, they're a little more modern, and I was doing improv when they came up, and so, yeah, like, I know that they were big in Chicago, and they went through all of that, and then I think they were on Mad TV for a few years before they got their own sketch show. And, yeah, I feel improv kind of lends itself to sketch I did a sketch show when I was in Charlottesville, and we basically met every week for 5 or 6 months, and we just improvised, and we all took notes, and then every couple of weeks we'd be like, hey, look at your notes. What sketches did we do that we improvised that we think were like really stood out to us? And then once we had that group of sketches, those improv scenes, we just work them over and over again into kind of sketch-like work. And so that's a lot of what Chicago does. A lot of characters that you see. I know, like, I don't remember, Chris Farley used to do the Matt Foley motivational speaker. That started as an improv thing, and he brought that with him to New York. I don't know about the Wayans family, but I feel like if you've got a family like that, when you're growing up, it's just a comedy show nonstop.
Yeah, probably just a comedy show. Just that whole family, they probably were riffing on each other on a regular basis, would be my guess. And like I said, I don't know them personally either, but I can just imagine them having routines probably at the kitchen table or whatever while they were doing their Thanksgiving dinner or whatever they were having at that time, maybe even in grade school, just going off on each other and things of that nature. Now, the other thing that I know about improv is that improv, because I've had some friends that have done improv for a number of years, including some that are from around the North Carolina area, is that it is also very much of an important tool for business owners, because I know a lot of people use it as part of their team building. So I was wondering if you've done any of that and how you found the corporate people able to address improv as a tool for trying to better themselves, because I know that a lot of times it seems like it's a team building tool and it helps with a lot of big corporations.
Yeah, I do corporate work. You guys just want to email me. My email is zarling@gmail.com. It's darling, but with a Z. And, contact me and I can do something. I feel what really happens, the collaborative effort of improv, where it's like you don't know what you're going to do, but someone's going to throw something out and we're just going to build off that. And something I like to push when I'm teaching a workshop is that everyone's had this boss where you're in a room at a meeting and the boss says, we need to solve this problem, and just starts going around the room and asking everyone what their suggestion is. And it's just like, nope, suggestion, no. And I've had a boss like this, and I'm at the end and I'm just like, I don't have a suggestion. And you're like choking off your people's creativity before they even get a chance to do it. And what I push is like, let's get everyone's ideas out into the room. Let's not say no to them, but let's consider them. And it's also a thing where, like, my idea might not be the solution, but it might jolt someone else to have a solution. You know, it might jog something in their memory. One that stands out is a few years ago in my day job in our office, we do like a 2-week training thing, and we used to print a big binder that had like all the materials that you'd get in it. And every year we'd do a sit down and be like, what could we do better? How do we make this easier? And I'm like, it'd be great if we could just give them like an iPad with all the files on it every year. And then like, here you go, you get a free iPad and here's your files. And we all kind of chuckled and left it at that. And then 2 years later, you could buy a Kindle Fire for less than it cost us to print those books. So we bought Kindle Fires for everyone and saved money and uploaded all the documentation to the Kindle Fire. And so, you want to get those ideas because, maybe something's not possible now, but it's possible in the future. Maybe that's not the answer, but maybe it gets someone else down the other path. Something happens for me, and I feel like this is writer's block, and I talked about this with comics too. If you have like an idea that you're not telling anyone, you're not writing down because you hate it, that's blocking your other ideas. I'm sure you've had that. You have a dumb idea and you don't write it down. You know it won't work, but it's the only idea you can think of. But once you write it down, once you put it out into the world, it's no longer blocking up your brain, and other ideas can flow through. And it sounds weird, and it doesn't sound like that's how your brain should work, but I've had people tell me that's exactly what's happened when they've had writer's block. They just wrote whatever stupid thing they couldn't get out of their brain, and it kind of unlodged everything.
Now, usually when I think of improv, I think of like this group of folks. Like it can be as many as 2 or it can be as many as 5 that I've seen usually with the improv. But just wondering now, is there such a thing as a solo improv performer? Like, can you literally do improv with just yourself? So like if I threw a word at you and Dean threw a word at you, could you literally rip a routine out of it like now, or is that like impossible?
No, that's actually what my show is. My show's Wisconsin Laugh Trip, and I love to drive around. I took 3 weeks off this summer and drove cross country, and I love meeting people and like developing characters off of that. And so Wisconsin Laugh Trip is, the week of the show that if I'm coming to your town, I'll just be thinking about what characters do I want to do, what kind of fun things do I want to do, and then I'll just come to you with those characters. Like one time at a festival, I was just like, what would you just like a Southern gentleman to explain to you, And the audience was like, explain Star Wars to us. And so this deep Southern gentleman explained the plot of Star Wars to them. I've done stuff where I'm like, what's a TV show, like a sitcom, that has an underrated or an underused job that you never see in a sitcom? And I like Garbage Man. And I was like, well, there was a good one with Garbage Man, but I'll do it anyway. And then I just improvised a scene where like it was like that moment where they were going for their Emmy, like a really serious scene that kind of had some comedy in it. So, yeah, it's possible. I did do it at a festival once, and the headliner was like, I didn't think you were going to be able to pull that off. I was really nervous for you. So I guess that made me realize that maybe I was doing something that is a little out of the ordinary. But yeah, most single sketch shows that I see are like people are writing sketches. But I really like the improv aspect of it and developing these characters and kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Last year earlier this summer, I was in a festival, and I usually do 3 or 4 segments per show, like a 20-minute show, and I had like 2 or 3. And I was in the green room before, like 5 minutes before I was supposed to go on, and someone had eaten Chinese food and left like 10 fortune cookies in the green room. And I just grabbed the fortune cookies and went on stage and played like a motivational speaker who had come to a factory to answer people's questions, and I used the fortune cookies to answer the question. And so it's just kind of like this mixture of fearlessness and probably stupidity and just just like flying by the seat of my pants, be like, I'm willing to try anything, and we'll go for it. But yeah, doing a solo improv show is possible, and it can be great when you're doing it right.
So what's the weirdest place that you've actually done improv at that you just like were just blown away by the fact that they were even thinking about doing improv? Because I'm imagining that you said you traveled the country, so I'm imagining that you've probably been to some places that you were not expecting the audience to be as rich as you got, like whether that was the backwoods of North Carolina or whether it was in somewhere like North Dakota. But where's the weirdest place that you've actually done a performance, and how did you get through that performance?
So the weirdest thing is right after I'd auditioned here in Richmond, there was a hurricane, and it knocked out all this power in the city. And the Richmond Times-Dispatch did a contest. It was the last Richmonder with Power contest, and all these people donated prizes. And we donated a show. And so the person who won lived on this farm out in, I think it's Keswick, which is maybe 15, 20 minutes from Richmond. And we get out there, and it's this farm, and there's a bunch of sheds inside. And one of the sheds, like, they're deer hunters. There's this deer that's been gutted open, and they've got blood draining into a bucket. And we get there, and it's just like this friendly country couple, and they invited, some people from around their farm to come, and they had a big spread of food for us in the back, and we just performed in their basement. And it was kind of one of those things where you're like, I guess we'll do it. And it turned out, it was a lot of fun. I think part of it is like, when you're a performer, you have to kind of lose those inhibitions and embrace the fun of the idea. What I'm doing, I love what I'm doing, and it's going to be fun, and it doesn't matter where I'm doing it. But that was definitely the weirdest thing we've ever did, was performing in the basement of someone who just happened to be the last Richmonder without power. I've also performed, I did a show in Charlottesville where one person showed up, and I always use that. Anytime someone complains about like a light show where there's only like 10 or 15 people, I'm like, I performed for one person, and she insisted we perform, and then when we started getting suggestions, she was like, I don't really like the giving suggestions part. And I'm like, lady, come on, you gotta meet us halfway,
So you was trying to do an improv show without giving suggestions. That seems like almost impossible.
I was like, come on, lady, like, and then we just, so we just kind of like made our way through it, and she